Okay, so welcome to another event. This is a lunchtime event with Dublin Coding School, and it's actually with one of our partners, which is Tangent, which is part of Trinity College, and also Launchbox. I won't explain what they are. I'll leave it to my guests. But just before I do, I'll just say that we're delighted to have partnered with this group. What the partnership does is give Tangent and Launchbox access to Dublin Coding School graduates in data analytics, full stack web development, UX, UI, design, automation testing, and cybersecurity, and gives them access to those graduates to come along as interns as part of the startups, which we'll be promoting through their channels. So I'll just maybe come over to our speakers here if they'd like to maybe introduce themselves one by one. I'll come to you first, Alison. If you'd maybe just like to introduce yourself to the viewers and who you are and what you do there.
Hi there, my name's Alison Tracy and I'm the Student Startup and Innovation Manager at Trinity. And part of my role is to run a number of different student-facing programs that are all centered around entrepreneurship and innovation, one of which is Launchbox, which is our summer accelerator.
Thank you very much. And also now our second speaker, who is Gavan, Drohan. Over to you.
Thanks, Luke. Yeah, Gavan Joan. Hi, everybody. I'm the head of entrepreneurship in Tangent in Trinity College. I've been in this role for about 3 years, and I oversee a lot of the different entrepreneurship sort of programs that we run, which I suppose we'll go into more sort of detail as we're going through the event. My background has been sort of in technology, early stage startups, innovation roles, including sort of running acceleration programs and consultancy. So looking forward to talking to you today.
Great, thank you very much. So a lot of experience there. So maybe we'll start. I suppose a lot of people are probably wondering, what is Tangent? So maybe it'd be good just to get that background and how it all fits into Trinity College and what it is.
Sure. Yeah, like Tangent plus, and the tagline is Trinity's idea workspace. You know, as a physical location, we're located within the new Trinity Business School, which is on sort of the science gallery end of campus. But we're actually sort of not part of the business school. We're independent of all units, and really, we were formed about 3 years ago from a number of different initiatives, you know, of which Launchbox would be one. But also we've run a lot of early education programs and innovation activities, and they were brought under a central brand of Tangent probably about 3 years ago at this stage. And you know, our remit, I suppose, is pretty wide. From the student side, you know, we run programs and engage with students, you know, from all disciplines, regardless of what they're studying. But equally, our definition of student is pretty broad. You know, we cater for students, as we say, from 17 to 70. You know, we work with secondary school students as part of our collaboration with Trinity's Walton Club for students, secondary school who are sort of interested in the STEM sort of subjects. So we do some workshops with those. But we then deal with sort of the traditional undergrad students that people would be familiar with. But we also run a number of sort of postgrad programs, very much centered around creative thinking, innovation, and entrepreneurship. And a lot of those are for people who have maybe been in a particular career path and they want to branch into something else, and they want to maybe modernize their skills. They may have taken a career break to raise a family. There can be lots of reasons why we take them in, but you know, the age profile there would be definitely sort of beyond sort of the undergrad side. And then we run a number of early stage accelerator programs, but even maybe for the first part of the talk, we said we'll focus maybe on the student activity. So a lot of what we do there is engaging with students who have an idea. And you know, and some people might think that the idea is for a startup. You know, we deal with them before that. You know, they might have just an interest in a topic, and the startup may come later or it may not. But what we try and do is we work with them, give them some skills that, you know, they may bring into a startup or they may bring into a wider career. So that takes the form of, you know, one-to-one mentorship, innovation challenges, hackathons, right through to probably our flagship Launchbox program, which Alison is responsible for. And maybe better for Alison sort of to talk about Launchbox rather than I.
Sure, yeah.
Thank you.
Should I jump into that now, Luke?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It'd be great to hear what Launchbox is all about.
Yeah, so Launchbox, as Gavan mentioned, its mission is kind of to take people in Trinity who have an idea and to turn that with support and with guidance and with mentorship and with a little bit of funding into a real startup. So each year we take on usually about 10 teams into the program. It runs June, July, August, because obviously some of our participants are studying from one end to the other. And we offer them 10K in equity-free funding. So we don't own their IP, we don't take a share of their business or anything. And that allows us to really be advocates for their startup. So to encourage them down whatever path, rather than kind of giving them advice based on return of investment. The program runs for 3 months. Each team is partnered up with a mentor that works directly with their team one-on-one. And these mentors are usually anyone from the startup ecosystem or even beyond who have kind of skills or experience that could really benefit the startup. The 10 startups are usually wildly different. So we normally have a very diverse cohort. They could be working on anything from AI solutions in stadia across the world for visually impaired sports fans to, developing a seaweed-based different kind of packaging for food and to replace single-use plastic. So the program needs to cater for all needs from early stage to those who are already revenue generating. And we do that by bringing back some Launchbox alumni, some experts in fields like legal, finance, marketing, sales, user acquisition, that kind of thing. And then also people who've been founders before who have a lot of experience from both sides. VCs come in to talk to the team. So it really is just kind of a jam-packed 3 months to help them progress as far as possible in that short space of time.
Right, okay. And I'm sure you must have many success stories from Launchbox already, or some interesting startups that have been through the program. It'd be great to hear about some of them.
Absolutely, yeah. So this is our 9th year of the program. We were founded in 2013. So we've had 9 years of startups coming through. Some of the kind of biggest success stories, I suppose, and the ones we always go to are the likes of Food Cloud, which is a social enterprise. It's actually took part in the first ever Launchbox. It's founded by Iseult Ward, and it's still going today. They basically tackle the problem of food waste by matching NGOs with supermarkets and other providers who would have a lot of food waste. So it's kind of a married solution and problem set. Other success stories would be Artomatics, which was founded by Eric Risser. It's kind of an AI, it uses, I'm always really bad at explaining this, but basically he works a lot with video game designers for kind of creating backgrounds that don't require a huge amount of artistic time, but aren't kind of the same stuff, just copied and pasted over and over and over using AI. And that was acquired, I think it was 2019, Gavan, correct me there, but for over $60 million. So that's another one. And then TouchTech Payments were acquired by Stripe. And again, I'm thinking 2019, but it might have been 2020. And that was a payment solution software platform that has been acquired with Stripe. So both of those co-founders were on Launchbox and are now working with Stripe.
Wow. Were they students in the college, or did they come in?
Kind of a mixture. So the Launchbox teams they just need to be a majority of Trinity students. So sometimes we have teams where it's a childhood friend and one Trinity student, but they might be studying elsewhere. So it's kind of a mixture, to be honest. I know Iseult studied business in Trinity. I know Eric was a PhD in computer science, but I think some of their co-founders were probably from external.
Okay, right.
And I can probably sort of add just a little bit there as well, sort of on that, Luke, because really what we do, it's all about sort of providing really a sort of a transformative learning environment. So we also sort of work with staff, we work with students, we work with researchers. So we often have a really broad mix in terms of the profile of people that get involved. And I suppose a sign of our success really is PitchBook, which analyzes sort of VC investments, and every year they publish a university report. So for the past 6 consecutive years, Trinity has been the #1 university in Europe for producing entrepreneurs. So they look at they look at all the VC funds, where the investments are being made. They look at the companies that are being invested in, and they look at the universities that those founders have come through. So I suppose that in itself is sort of a real sign of success for sort of Trinity. But some of the companies that Alison mentioned, there'll be a number of different threads. We work with with deep tech in terms of companies, but there's very much a strong social enterprise cohort that comes through every sort of year. So while it's great to look at some of those KPIs in terms of sort of fundraising and sort of acquisitions and stuff like that, but it's not the be all and end all for us. Sometimes we look at sort of huge success that come from companies. They may not turn over millions, or they may not sort of sell for millions, but they're fantastic sort of companies, and that's hugely valuable to us. That we try not to lose sight of some of those sort of metrics. like we work very closely with Enterprise Ireland, but Enterprise Ireland's metrics would be different to ours. It just comes back to providing that transformative environment that, you know, we often speak about pathways that students can follow with us. And, you know, we try and provide programs and courses and different activities that, you know, they can heavily engage with us, or they may sort of dip in and out, or they might even know anything about us the first year. And as they sort of become familiar with the college, they start to engage with us more. And, you know, that's valuable to us, that, you know, we maybe they came and they did, you know, a workshop around design thinking. And then when they moved into a particular role within sort of in a corporate, or they might be working in a hospital, or whatever the environment is, that they have a different mentality and a different view of how looking at sort of problems and maybe coming up with different solutions. You know, we want to make sure that we're capturing that sort of as part of it as well. You know, so that runs right through from, you know, all the activities we do. You know, so within Tangent, like there's 3 pillars. You know, so we have our education programs. We have the entrepreneurship activities that myself and Allison and Joe and Brendan also work on. And then we have an engagement stream, which is really about how we engage with corporates, how we engage with sponsors. You know, but, you know, innovation, creativity, design thinking, you know, it's the thread that probably goes through a lot of the different sort of activities that we do. And I'll, you know, in case my colleague Dan, who's the head of education, is tuning in, we're currently recruiting for our next iteration of our Springboard funded program. So this is one of the programs for people who they may say, well, I've never gone to Trinity. How can I work with Trinity? We run some of these programs in a blended environment. We've even run them sort of them nationally. So we're recruiting at the moment. I think the close date is next week for the next iteration of our postgrad certificate in creative thinking, innovation, and entrepreneurship. I'll get it all out, and I think that kicks off in September. So again, that's primarily funded by Springboard, you know, and it's a level 9 program, and the award comes from Trinity. You know, so we get a lot of really positive feedback from people around the country who've done this, to say, well, you know, it's fantastic for me to be able to do sort of a program within Trinity. You know, I thought I might have had to give up time, go into to campus every day. You know, so you would be familiar even with your own sort of programs, Luke, in terms of, you know, the real value that comes from being able to run things in a blended or sort of digital environment. You know.
Yeah, very good. So then, let me know for these startups that are within your Tangent, how does it work? You know, day to day, week to week, for them as you know, I suppose many people might be watching this thinking, I've heard about these sort of incubators or Launchbox, if you like, and, you know, an idea goes in one side and comes out the other. but I suppose a lot of them will be watching thinking, how does it actually work? And also some of them might be thinking, if I end up being an intern on one of these startups, what's going on? So it'd be interesting to hear what it's like day to day, maybe week to week in Launchbox or Tangent.
But do you want to talk about Launchbox first?
Yeah, that'd be great. So with Launchbox, I mean, I think with any accelerator, but with Launchbox specifically, a lot of it is, you know, it's not a spoon feeding environment. So while we can bring in a speaker or set you up as a one-to-one with advice from someone in finance or legal, ultimately it's your startup, it's your baby. And so what you want to do with it and how far you want to get is going to be determined by your own craft to an extent. So in any given week, I mean, I'm taking last week just as an example because it's close in my mind, we would have had a speaker in from Frontline Ventures who would have done one-to-ones with the teams afterwards. So kind of giving an investor's view on their elevator pitch or their pitch deck, offering them advice about kind of next steps, also kind of just introducing them to the Irish ecosystem. We would have had a founder in who would have done Launchbox previously, talking about his own journey, mistakes made, challenges faced, things he would advise them to avoid. And then we would have had one-to-ones with PwC, which is kind of finance oriented. So it allows people to ask specific questions about their own business setup and their own tax situation, any kind of issues like that, obviously for free of charge. And we also have kind of one-to-ones with Techstars who would work quite closely with the Irish ecosystem, obviously, as well as the American and UK. And again, that would be about kind of network, next steps, what do they want to do next? But aside from those program elements that we schedule, I would have one-to-ones with each of the teams to see where they're at. Are they burnt out? We're nearly 2/3 of the way through now. So the answer is often yes at this stage. Do they need support from us? Like, what can we help with? Can we make them an introduction? But then other than those elements, it's really up to the startups and the teams themselves to work on their own graft. Do they have sales meetings? Are they doing customer discovery at the moment? Is it all coding? Is it all building their MVP? And that's really left up to them. And that's why it can feel sometimes you can get a bit lost. And that's why it's great to work on a startup as part of a program, because you're part of a community. They might not have the same challenges as you this week, but they might next week. You have that support. You have that kind of bank of advice. So that's kind of a token week out of Launchbox. But every week is different for every team. And that's kind of the beauty of the job, really.
Right, very good. And it's interesting to hear you. So they're building their minimal viable products, the MVPs. And I'm sure some of our web development graduates will be licking their lips hearing that, hoping to help people build things and in a real environment. But what actually interesting happens after the course finished, or not the course, the accelerator finishes and the startup is there? Are they then left to go out into the world and bring the things they've learned to try and grow, or do you stay in touch with them?
We absolutely stay in touch. And I know Gavan can talk a little bit more about kind of the Tangent ecosystem specifically, but no, we absolutely stay in touch with all of our Tangent alumni, and often find they're really kind of valuable in mentoring the teams who will be working on the same, you know, on their startups next year. And so on. They can be a really rich source of advice and mentorship and support going forward. So no, we absolutely do keep in touch. We have regular alumni events. And then obviously Launchbox runs every summer. So we usually see a number of our alumni in different guises and wearing different hats during the program itself. But Gavan, maybe you want to say a little bit more about kind of Tangent more generally in that sense?
Yeah, thanks, Alison, because I think it's a great question, sort of, Luke. You know, it's how do we keep supporting the sort of the students and the startups that we've engaged with, because you know, in addition to Launchbox, which is very much our student accelerator, and it's a broad, it's not a specific thematic sort of area. It's pretty broad in terms of the kind of startups. We just look at, these are, I think, the best sort of 10 that sort of that are applied in particular year. Yep. But we also run early stage sort of startup programs who don't necessarily have any affiliation sort of with Trinity. So we're funded to run these programs, and that probably started about 3 years ago. We ran, and a number of these are pan-European as well. So we've run early stage accelerators for companies in the digital health space. We've run sort of a climate-related one for the last number of years, and this year we added, you know, it's probably a flavor of sort of climate sustainability in its circular economy. So it's part of a government and European Union funded initiative called Circulera. So it's all around circular economy and products there, because people talk about climate and it's all about emissions, and emissions isn't sort of a huge amount of it, but they reckon that maybe 50% of the improvements will come from things like, you know, energy and moving to electric vehicles and how much carbon is emitted from, you know, power plants. But a huge amount of change is also going to come from how products are manufactured and recycled. And that's something as well where we even see some of the students, startups sort of focusing. And, you know, like, we've had some great companies come through there. We've had, you know, TrackWorks participated in our digital health program. They won the Interseed sort of startup of the year. On the Climate Kicks funded program, you know, we have everyone from Collect, Hexafly were involved in the early stage, and we've had some companies recently looking at the whole, you know, construction space and the manufacturing and different sort of technologies sort of there. So a lot of my time as well, I'm looking is there a bridge which we can, some of the students that participate on our say Launchbox program, we may be able to continue to support them as they move into some of the accelerator programs that we could just continue to support, because you know, all startups go through this, you know, trough of despair and sort of go, I need funding, you know. So how can we keep our arms around them for maybe a little bit longer and give them sort of a better chance of succeeding? But, you know, Alison spoke about a typical sort of week there in Launchbox. What we find is there's no typical sort of week that startups go through, and particularly, you know, at different stages as you get into sort of to the space where maybe they're an earlier stage. Even though they're early stage, some will be a little bit further on than others. So a lot of the engagement interaction comes down to maybe that one-to-one mentoring that Alison sort of spoke about. So you can do workshops, you know, and we do stuff around sort of, you know, finance and product development and design and branding. But then you've got to bring in maybe subject matter experts who'll help you by maybe sort of going into some of the focus areas, and that's where the differentiation comes. But a lot of it goes back to that one-to-one mentoring, because they can be you take something like circular economy, and we had everything from companies that were looking at fish farming to different ways of manufacturing shoes, battery recycling, and you're going to go, I've got the program for you. This is, yes, at broad level, but a lot of it really comes down to how you engage with them on a one-to-one sort of basis, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, very, very interesting stuff. And have you had any startups from Launchbox move into the other side of Tangent and the accelerator?
Yeah,
and move through the gears?
Even this year it sort of came in reverse, you know. So we have a program, I should say, a startup called Field of Vision, you know. So they were doing fantastic things even ahead of us sort of recruiting for Launchbox this year. So they actually participated on an artificial intelligence accelerator alongside sort of a company called Rafiq, who was developing a Siri-like sort of product for the Arab world. We had Peel, which is taking sort of data and applying AI to it in the health space. And then we had, you know, Field of Vision, which was our student startup. And I think Alison sort of touched on earlier that what they're doing is they're developing a haptic feedback, so physical device for visually impaired people who want to, maybe even interested in a soccer or a GA sport. And using technology, they can follow how the ball is moving around sort of pitch. But they were so successful in getting onto some of these other programs, and now they're sort of participating on Launchbox. Usually it goes the other way, but they're a fantastic startup, and I suppose no greater validation than they were awarded the Enterprise Ireland Student Entrepreneur of the Year. Sort of just earlier this year, and they featured as part of. They're actually the only startup that were featured as part of the government's launch of their AI strategy, sort of from government buildings, sort of last week, you know. So it's we expect great things of those. But we expect
they're
great
all
things.
in second year, I think. They're all still in 2021. That's incredible.
Yeah, sometimes you feel that. What did I do?
Yeah, what am I doing? what did I do with my years in college?
It certainly sounds like a very interesting startup. And you mentioned there about engaging with VCs. Is that, maybe explain how that works? So do you have a bunch of contacts that the college have that come in to look at these, or about like a Dragon's Den scenario, or how does that work?
It can vary, you know. So if you take programs like Launchbox, and again, a huge value is that having run for now some years is the alumni that have come through. And again, as I spoke about, people going different sort of pathways and direction, you know. So Finn Murphy, who's a principal in Frontline, he participated in Launchbox, you know, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago or so. And you know, with a startup, so he took that learning into a different sort of path, and he's great for coming back and speaking to the startups. And if you take something like Launchbox, they're typically maybe they're a little bit early for VC fundraising, but what the conversations there are, when you are ready, these are the kind of things that VC want to see. You know, all these metrics are okay, but these are the key things that they want to see. As we get into the sort of some of the other programs we're running, maybe sort of that where the startups are a little bit more mature, a lot of those, you know, they are in the space where they're looking to fundraise, and you know, the conversations with VCs can be a bit different there. But you know, a huge thing that we do with all our programs, right through from even as part of our innovation challenges and our hackathons, is storytelling and pitching. You know, because you can have this fantastic idea, but you have to be able to explain it. You have to be able to sell it to an audience. So we spend a lot of time sort of there, and that feeds right through in terms of what's your story. You know, what's the unique thing about your sort of your product? How do I pitch it? And we do things like, you know, practice sort of pitch sessions as well. That sort of, you know, when they do go and either pitch formally to a VC, or typically what more happens is, okay, you got a minute, give me your elevator pitch. Yeah, and you have to get in. You're not going to get the investment on that elevator pitch, but you might hopefully get another meeting, and that's really what it's all about. So it's making sure they're prepared with their sort of their full pitch, and tell me what you do.
Yeah.
You know,
okay.
It's important, like storytelling and being able to sort of to tell that. And look, the reality is you know, when your graduates, they're coming out of sort of their program, they need to be able to tell their story, because interviews are stories. You know, you need to be able to be comfortable and talk about yourself and sort of what you do, you know. So that's sort of a key thing for us, you know.
And I think the other thing is network, you know, like you might not be ready to take on investment now. It might not be this startup. It could be your next venture, or it could be you join a different startup and in 3 years you're back in front of Frontline or Elkstone or whoever. But because you have that connection and you've already kind of made an impression, you have something to draw back on. I think we're so lucky in Ireland to have that kind of very informal startup ecosystem where people do really give back and will give time to early stage startups. It's just an easier place to kind of get started and go back and say, you might remember me, I was on Launchbox 3 years ago, and you know, they'll still know what that is and what that means. And it can be really valuable.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely sort of spot on, because there is, you know, people talk, how could Ireland be different than say the UK or the US? But there are particular sort of differences. You know, I spent a number of years running a startup accelerator called Wire, which is just Telephonic initiative. And, you know, anytime we picked up the phone to anyone, say, hey, could you come in and talk to the startup about your sort of journey and your experience? Yeah, no problem. Happy to do it. They love telling telling the stories and, you know, putting it all out there. These are the mistakes I made, because often it's learning from the mistakes that they made is far more valuable, because people say, oh, you've been really successful founder and you've done really well. It must have, you know, everything went fine for you. And you go, no, I made so many mistakes. And, you know, let me tell you sort of why I made that decision and sort of what the impact was. And people learn a sort of a huge amount from that. Whereas, you know, I was able to talk to some of my colleagues who were running the similar accelerators in the UK and in Europe. They often sort of struggled to find, they would get some, but sometimes they had to pay for people to come in and sort of and do workshops, whereas no one ever asked to be paid. You know, they wear, you know, it's a bit like you put on the green jersey and sort of you're going to come in and you're going to talk and sort of maybe help the next sort of generation. So particularly the founders who've been around for a while and done it over a number of years, you know, they love to be asked and they love to be able to come back and share, because they feel they're sharing in the success then, and those companies go on and do sort of good things sort of later. And it's paying it forward or is it paying back? But you know, you come in, you spend the time, and hopefully those people will do the same for the ones that are coming.
So a virtuous circle. And is that a cultural thing, do you think, in Ireland, or is it?
Yeah, my experience, it definitely seems to be sort of a stronger cultural thing here than maybe in other countries. You know, but you know, maybe we're just sort of biased, but definitely in my own experience, you know, people have just loved to be able to come in and do it. And you know, like Allison is really very successful sort of, you know, founders, like some of the founders of Intercom who will come in and talk to Launchbox, and they love it. You know, they're coming back and sort of, oh, I remember when I was a student and we did this and sort of and that, and you know, here's what I've been doing so far. And look, if you need any introductions or advice, you know, feel free to get in contact. You know, it's fantastic to see.
Yeah, so lovely.
Yeah. Brilliant stuff. And is there anything coming up in the next 6 months to a year that you'd like to let people know about in Tangent or Launchbox?
Oh yeah, is there anything coming up? There's always
stuff.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting back on campus, because it felt quieter. I think, you know, in this remote environment, and Alison probably testified to it as well, we seem to be doing 10 times more work in terms of different initiatives that we're doing. That commuting time has been replaced by doing other activities. So yeah, look, there is a lot going on. We'll, you know, I touched on some of the accelerator programs, you know, so we'll be running another iteration of our climate program. You know, so we'll be recruiting for that. It'll be focused around some city challenges. So we have a call out for startups in that space, probably September time. We will also be doing our circular economy one in a similar space. January, we're going to be recruiting again for our Assessor Artificial Intelligence one. Early next summer, we've got our digital health one. But one of the things that we're rolling out at the moment, and it's part of an initiative that the government launched called the Human Capital Initiative. And I despise the term human capital, but that's what it's called, sort of the Human Capital Initiative.
Yeah. It's very robotic, yeah.
Yes, and really what it's centered around that there's so much uncertainty in the future of jobs and sort of in careers, and you know, if you're a glass half full or a glass half sort of empty person, you might think, oh, this will create opportunities. Or you might say, oh, these jobs are all going to disappear. Absolutely, jobs will disappear, but new ones will be created. And really what this initiative is about is making sure that the universities are working with industry and VCs and business to understand what are the requirements of graduates of the future, to make sure that you're providing them with the right skills, you know, and initiatives like yourself, Luke, in coding school, that, you know, you're helping people retrain. So it's a similar initiative, because part of what we do is on the retraining side, but also making sure that the courses and the curriculum are being kept up to date with what is required. So one of the things that we are using on the entrepreneurship side of that is to develop what we're calling an open incubator. And again, it's building on the success of Launchbox, but we deal with 10 startups every year, and there's always, there could be 10 times the number of startups to apply. And just because you weren't in the selected 10 doesn't mean you had a bad idea. Often that happens. There's this application cliff. They apply, they don't get it, and they just move on to something else. They say, well, maybe it wasn't a good idea. And says, yes, it was a good idea. You just didn't make our 10. And we're certainly not invaluable. We often sort of look after us and says, maybe that one that sort of we didn't select, might have been sort of a better idea. But that's, I still see some of the companies that we rejected from Wire, and I was going, we should have picked that one. But what we're doing is with this open incubator is providing a platform where people can maybe get some of the same benefits that they might get on some of our acceleration programs, but in a more self-directed way. So we'll have modules where they can come in and they can do things at their own pace as well. Because one of the things that we found is, maybe a summer-based accelerator in the center of Dublin for 3 months doesn't suit everyone. It doesn't even suit all undergrad students who want to head off on a J1, maybe sort of but they want to work at their startup at the same time. We've got people on our postgrad programs who maybe have a family. Again, they can't commit to that level of time to participate maybe in the summer accelerator, but they'd like to tip away at things over a longer period of time. So that's something we've been developing over the last 9 months. So, and we'll be rolling it out for the graduates when they come on site in September, the undergrads, I should say. So a lot happening. It's good. It's been kept busy.
Very good. So maybe a final thing. I don't know, Alison, do you have anything to say, anything coming up on Launchbox? So it's limited to 10 startups. I didn't realize that. So you have 10 going every summer. And then it's probably, you must get, as you said, there are quite a few applying through.
We do. Yeah, it's not always an easy decision who gets through. Fortunately, Gavan, myself, and the rest of the team, we just mark the applications, and then the teams go through to a pitch, and we have judges who are fresh to the teams, and we don't have to make the final decision, which is always nice. But yeah, the program, we run until the end of August. So our demo day will be at the end of August. So all the teams will pitch in front of a panel of judges, and there'll be a winner. And so that's probably what's coming up next, but we'll make sure to share the link with you for viewing, and you can pass it on to anybody who's interested. That's kind of our next big thing for Launchbox. And then we'll be into the next academic year. Back to the beginning.
Yeah, great.
And one of the things that we want to roll out probably in the next year as well, and we've had conversations with maybe some of our peer universities, is how the top teams that come through Launchbox, excuse me, and then where they may be running similar programs in other universities. How can we have a get together and learn from get those startups sharing their experience, and maybe build some sort of challenges around that. And maybe this is something that we can travel and rotate into to different universities. So that's something that we're developing at the moment as well. So it's
we're hoping to roll that out semester 2 of next year, because we're hoping everyone will be able to travel, so that we'll have visitors that won't have to hotel quarantine and all of that stuff. But yeah, it's exciting. It's always really nice when different students from different universities, and even for us, like when you see how other people work, it's always just so much more interesting. And then staying in your own lane, I suppose.
Yeah, it's I suppose one of the things that we had to do, like when COVID hit March of last year, because Launchbox was always on campus, on site. Suddenly you've got to switch that to a remote environment. And it was difficult, but it had to be done. So we moved all our acceleration programs online, but we're keen to get some of that in-person, on-site activities up and running again, because I think that's where you really get the shared learning and the experiential, where people are able to bounce ideas off each other. It's harder to do
much more organic. Like it can be much more spontaneous that way. There's only so much we can do to recreate that nice the word, kismet, when two people are talking and they realize they have the same problem.
Get the post-it notes up on the design thinking boards.
Like it's just, some of these things are just harder to do. You don't have a virtual water cooler in conversation. So we're keen to get things back on site. But at the same time, this will be the new normal and the new sort of future. We see it in our education programs, and you see it as well, that it's the remote learning aspect hasn't all been negative. Like there's been a lot of benefits from it as well. Even at a simple level, if we're running an accelerator program and maybe there's a 2-hour workshop and we're running that in Tangent in normal circumstances, if we've got a startup that's based in West Cork, for example, they've got to travel up and sort of, the early morning or the night before, they travel up, they do that sort of worship, and then they go and they have to travel back. And it's taken at a minimum a day out of their schedule. Whereas, there's a workshop. Yeah, I can do all my business, join in, do the workshop and go back. There's benefits to that. So we're just trying to see how we structure the new programs to maybe get some of the advantages of that. And
a hybrid model it's going to be interesting to see how things even will be in 3 or 4 years. That's really the time when you see what will be like in 5 years. Will we have stuck with some of the habits we picked up during?
And we're going to see loads of startups developing solutions for hybrid learning environments. There's nothing sure.
Of course,
and many startups that sort of, they thought their product was the wrong product at the right time. Suddenly went, whoa, wrong demand for what I've been doing after all. But that's the nature. You're constantly adapting, and like everything with startups, there's often an element of luck and timing involved.
Yeah, sometimes. So if someone's out there and they have their startup idea, or maybe how do they get in touch with maybe both of you? First, maybe Tangent, if it was maybe someone who's not in the college.
Yeah, like if you go online on the main sort of TCD website, so tcd.ie/tangent, there'll be information there in terms of our different activities, and people can get in touch through there. And similar, follow our accounts on Twitter, LinkedIn. Our marketing team are very active on LinkedIn as well. So you'll have the details in terms of the different programs. And I suppose if I'm going to emphasize one aspect of what we do, it's that is, we're not just for your traditional sort of undergrad students. Our activity is much broader than that from our education programs and our accelerator sort of programs. We're Trinity centered at the core of what we do, but we definitely extend far broader and wider into the ecosystem.
And maybe Alison, on Launchbox, if there are any students from Trinity who don't know about it yet, or anybody, what would be the best steps they could take?
Reach out, get in touch. We're also on tcd.ie/tangent. All the info is there. But you can also email launchbox@tcd.ie, which will reach us at any stage. But yeah, there's lots of information online, how to apply, what we're looking for, how to book in with us for one-to-one sessions. So yeah, it's all digital, but launchbox@tcd.ie will find us as well.
Great. I suppose that also goes for people who might be just about to start studying at Trinity and haven't even joined yet. Start thinking about your startup idea early. Well, look, I'd like to thank you both for joining me today. I don't know if you have any final thoughts you'd like to say, if there's anything, but
just on a final thought, we appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. We're looking forward to the partnership, and we will definitely sort of be working together with you in terms of trying to identify some of the skills that are startups, not just the Launchbox ones, but right across our acceleration programs, and maybe try and match and marry those with some of the graduates that you have, and hopefully we can present some opportunities for internships or maybe something even longer lasting between your graduates and our startups.
Right. Well, thank you very much for that. And I'll just finish by saying to anyone who is watching, our website is www.dublincoding.ie. That's Dublin Coding School. And as we mentioned there, we have our courses in full stack web development, data analytics, which is the technical aspects, so SQL, Tableau, Python, and that type of thing. Also for automation testing using newer systems like Cypress and Selenium. We also do the C#.NET stuff as well. And UX, UI design, and a new course in the basics, the fundamentals, of cybersecurity. So if you're interested in any of those courses, you can come on board. We have the whole career center afterwards, where we look to place you with our partner companies and also partner groups, such entities, I should say, such as Tangent, where we look to place interns into their startups as well. So get in touch if any of that's of interest. And look, again, thank you very much to Gavan and Allison for joining us, and look forward to working with you too.
My pleasure. Thanks, Luke.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.